So these are blocks that have built a wall preventing your ability to broadcast out your manifestation into the ethers of the quantum field and beyond so that it can materialize. Now we're at the last block to abundance in this short series of deblocking abundance in detail and how to remove them so you can have the vision of your life, business, and legacy that you want. This is the last one. We're going to talk about family inherited loyalties, and it's a doozy. As I mentioned in previous videos, that limiting beliefs represent our external world beliefs, and our safety patterns represent our internal beliefs. Then family inherited loyalties represent our other world beliefs. These are rooted in the larger family soul, also called the family system, that includes all your ancestors that came before you, that are connected to you and woven into your family system through multiple timelines and dimensions. This is what I mean by other world belief patterns. Please note, this has nothing to do with religion or God. This is all based in the work by Bert Hellinger called Family Constellation. So family inherited loyalties, I want to talk about this because these are the hardest to shift. They are definitely revisable. It's just that they are the toughest. They are the toughest because they're done out of love. Family inherited loyalty are things that you do consciously and subconsciously to show love and loyalty to your family, your ancestors, and those that came before you. These are things like sabotaging your success or limiting your abilities because you feel ashamed of being more successful than your family. Family loyalties show up as beliefs like, who am I to have it better than my ancestors when they sacrificed so much for so little? I can't have it better than my ancestors who lost so much. We've always worked hard for our money. No one can live better than anyone else in this family. Master Casca Fayette said it best when he was back in 1977 in his piece on the source of suffering. He said, my observation is and has always been that every time I'm confronted with the experience of moving forward, I'm inclined to resist and avoid becoming more of what I already am. Because every time I'm confronted with going forward, I'm also confronted with allowing someone else to stay where they are. The source of suffering is in the ways we suffer for other people in an unworkable attempt to say I love you. Or what this means is when you have a family inherited loyalty at play, it's how we show our loyalty and love to those who came before us. And we take this on subconsciously at a very, very young age, even in utero, because this pattern is created from love. It's the hardest to shift, and we hold on to it with all of our unconscious might. We don't want those who went before us to feel unloved or alone in their suffering. Human beings' strongest compulsion is to belong. It's hardwired as part of our survival and safety to belong. Human beings are willing to kill to belong. This is why war is possible. It's our compulsion to belong. How that shows up in family inherited loyalties is a child is willing to take on another suffering in order to not let that family member suffer alone. The child wants to take away the suffering or show belonging and loyalty by joining that family member in their pain. This only proliferates the suffering. For example, I knew a client whose mother was depressed because she had lost her twin sister at a very, very young age. The mother so missed her twin sister that she had a hard time living her own life. She was pulled towards death through depression. This woman had a child who grew up feeling depressed as well. What we uncovered was at a young age, the daughter didn't want her mother to suffer alone in her depression. The daughter decided to join her mother in the depression so her mother would not be alone. Now, this is incredibly loving and generous, yet it's futile because you can no longer take another suffering than you can heal another person. Can you go to the gym for me and do ab work? No, I wish you could, but you can't. Just like I can't drink water for your thirst and have you be hydrated. So taking on another's pain to show our love to them and our loyalty to our family's well-being is futile. It just creates more pain in the world. I've also seen this with a client whose great-grandfather lost his business and felt shame about it. He was never the same again. My client, the great-grandchild, had pipelined in the same experience as her great-grandfather. She lost her business and had great shame over it and was struggling to get out of it. I have seen this with families who ostracize or outcast another family member, only to have a generation or two later repeat the same outcasting of a family rebel. And it goes on for generations. Many times when a family member is cast out, the family system as a whole needs to include that member. So to include them, a family member who's born in a later generation will represent that outcast by creating the same situation for themselves in their own lives. A tragic and heartbreaking example of family inherited loyalties being repeated is Whitney Houston, who dies in a bathtub with drugs in her system. And 3 years later, her daughter, Bobby Christina, dies the same way, tragically in a bathtub with narcotics in her system. It's heartbreaking. Family inherited loyalties can span generations and generations. They can be emotional connections like depression, shame, fear, overwhelm, heartbreak, guilt, and grief. Or they can be physical connections like loss of fortunes, death, outcasting, criminal punishment, abandonment, lost babies, loss of a parent at a young age. Again, these are ways that we take on the suffering of another family member that we love. It's a way to show our loyalty, our love and belonging with them. We do it out of love, so it's incredibly kind and generous, yet it's futile. These two can be revised. It takes a bit more tools and time, yet they're all revisable. When something is done out of love, that entanglement, that bond is so strong, it can be really hard to break. So we work with it in ways that allow there to be respect, love, and belonging in other ways that do not involve taking on another's pain and suffering as your own. If you look at your family history and notice that there are troubling patterns of entanglements in your life that also run in your family's history, it might be useful to get those revived. If you see patterns of family drama, patterns of family tragedy, patterns of family upsets that keep happening generation after generation after generation, it would be useful to get those revised. When you get to have your own experience of money, or your own experience of having a successful business, or a loving relationship, or your own health and vitality, then it opens up a whole new world and your life is not the same. I know, because my family mantra was always about how hard you had to work for money and success. My great-grandfather immigrated over to the US at age 19 and had to support his growing family. I had the loyalty entanglement of, who am I to have it easier than my ancestors, who had it so hard for so long and sacrificed a lot? If there was an easier way to grow a business and I took that route, my subconscious loyalties would always create some unforeseen challenge to have it be a lot harder than it needed to be. This went on for years. I didn't realize what was happening under the surface. There's a part of me that knew how my parents and my family believed that hard work equals success. And I understood they believed only hard work gets you paid. And I didn't want to disrespect them by doing it better or having it easier than them, both financially and emotionally. I felt guilty and almost ashamed that I would want it easier and better. There's nothing wrong with their way of life, yet it wasn't in my heart. And I knew it could be different. I knew it could be more fun. I knew it could be easier. I wanted more freedom to move about in my own life, my own freedom of choice, and to create my own experience, not a predestined default experience of life that was a copycat of all those who had gone before me. Here's where I bumped up against, who am I to have it better? That guilt. Fast forward to when I learned about family inherited loyalties, I realized how everything else I tried was not making a difference. And I used the tools to untangle myself from the limiting beliefs, the struggle, and the pain of my larger family system. I stopped showing my loyalty to my family through pain and suffering, and I shifted it to something more useful and appropriate that respects who my ancestors were. I now connect to them through their gifts and abilities instead of their pain and suffering. And that is how they would want it to be. Your ancestors did not struggle, sacrifice, and endure pain just so you could spend your life doing the same suffering on repeat in modern time. Your ancestors' struggles would be for naught if you repeated that same pain and suffering for your life. They would be proud of you to have had it better and to appreciate what they did to help you have it better. And you too can do that through their capabilities and gifts that would honor their lives and their sacrifices, and it would not entangle you to repeat them. Instead, you can continue forward with the best parts of them as part of your shared legacy. This is the biggest gift you can give yourself and the future generations of your family system, especially for the children, yours or others, is to untangle these loyalties so that you and others can create your own experience of life versus taking on the one that has been causing suffering for generations. If you want to learn more about how to untangle from your family inherited loyalties, select a time below to connect and we can chat more.